Are you ready to take the challenge? Come and join us in LifeSource Masterclasses. Today's episode of Masterclass is all about healing female sexuality. Our guest is Diane McCann, the founder of beyondtheordinary.net.au. She has taught tantra for couples, the goddess within, and man's inner journey all over the planet for, well, over 5 decades. Her divine wisdom and knowings that she freely shares resonate with those committed to self-development and those newly considering different ways of being. To quote Diane, it's time to rewrite the history books for women and sexuality and stop blaming men. So let's take a listen now.
I want to start with talking a little bit about how all of the movies and all of the stories and everything that we ever read about the Grail, one of the ones that pops into my mind immediately is Harrison Ford, in that movie where his father's crying out to him, help or come and get me, and he's trying to get the Grail. And the Grail is always depicted as a cup. I believe that we, that's women, actually are the Grail. I really believe that that is what we are. It's the feminine principle of the world. It's the half of the feminine and masculine which can't function without the other half. So if we look at the Grail, and in the versions that we all see, the women actually somewhere along the line are in possession of it, and the men, whenever you think about that kind of thing, there's usually a male with a spear. Well, if you think about the Grail, the cup, as being a woman and her yoni, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a vagina, or in tantra, it's a sacred space, versus the spear, which of course can be interpreted quite literally as being the penis or the lingam or the wand of light. When we bring those two things together, we have a wholeness. So we really need each other if we are going to change how this planet actually works. Now, I personally hold the thought that most people, and women in particular, are anaesthetized sexually. And I think that we're numb in many, many, many areas in our life. It's like we've had 3,000 years of patriarchy. And so because it's been a patriarchal world and because women have been annihilated over 3,000 years. So, if we spoke up in the old days, we were burnt, or we were put in a nunnery, or we were put in a psychiatric place and we were laughed at and ridiculed. I don't know that there is a woman on the planet, Jane, who has not been inappropriately touched somewhere along the line, accidentally, in a lift, or wolf whistled, or cat called, or any of those things. It's like women for centuries have buried those feelings of rage that we hold. I'm talking about the women as a whole. I'm not talking specifically individuals, although I do see it in many, many, many women. So it's like there's this deep, dark rage that's inside us. And so what we do is we actually shut down. It's like, I'm not going there because it's too painful, it's too hard, and why should I do that for that person? So I think that there is an original wild woman. Like, I've been reading lots of ancient stories, the story about the men being drawn in by the Selkies, S-E-L-K-I-E, who, the mermaid type women who call to them. But there's an amazing story about a Selkie who gets captured by a fisherman, and he's really lonely, and he captures this Selkie this night accidentally in his fishing nets. But they're only allowed out of the water for a certain amount of time, otherwise they can't go back. And he was so besotted with her that he took her home and he made love to her. And he asked her to stay for a year and a day. It's a really old story. Of course, when the year and the day was up, they had a child, and so she stayed again. And by the time she got to a place in her life where she was like, something's missing. What's missing? And, of course, she no longer had her selfie skin. She had human skin. No matter how she tried, she found all these old selkie skins one night, but she couldn't sew them together to make her own skin because she'd given it up. And the way I see women is we've given it up. We've given away that incredible part of who we are, the truth of who we are, which is we hold up half the sky, as that beautiful book says. So it's like, if we look at the original wild woman, this was a woman who spoke her truth, who claimed her sexuality. You know, look at the story of Demeter and Persephone, is the beautiful, beautiful daughter of the goddess Demeter, or Demeter, whichever way you want to say it. And Hades, down there under the ground, he saw her and went, I'm going to have her. And so he stole her from the earth. And so Demeter was totally devastated, and she spent months and months and months walking the earth calling for her daughter. And eventually she became almost catatonic, and two young sisters found her. They took her home to their mother. But of course, being with a mother and her two daughters made her even worse, with shock and fear and grief. And along came Balbo, goddess Balbo, who is known in the goddess world as the raucous one, you know, the raunchy one and the sexy one. Not sexy, that's not a good word, but who exploits her feminine wiles, if you like. And so they brought her to try to get Demeter out of her pain. And she told jokes, nothing happened. And eventually she lifted up her skirts, and of course she was naked underneath, and she spread her legs, and it made Demeter laugh. And she laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. So eventually she decided to talk to Zeus, the big god of the sky, and made a deal with him that she could have her daughter back for 6 months of the year, which of course is spring and summer, and the other 6 months of the year Persephone would go underground to be with Hades, and that's autumn and winter. So that's the ancient myth of that. But what that means is that by looking at a yoni, it made her laugh. So I think that what I'm coming to fast is the conclusion that women are the grail, that we need to absolutely get in touch with our own sexuality in a really big way. We need to be honouring it. We need to be expressing what we feel. We've for too long been at the effect of men. We have to take responsibility for the fact that we think men know everything there is to know. What we have to do is we actually have to start spending time with ourselves and with our yoni and with our beloved, but exploring it. You know, I've had women who have said, I never masturbate, or I never touch myself. Or it's like, why not? You touch your face, you know, you touch your skin, hopefully with love. We have to reframe how we have observed sexuality in our mothers and our grandmothers and in ourselves, so that we can teach our daughters. Because if we give up, you know, we keep licking our wounds. I've been hurt by a man, you know, or that didn't work, or this didn't work, or I'm never going to be able to have an orgasm. Those stories that we keep repeating to ourselves and to our girlfriends, you know, who of course nod their head and go, yes, yes, I agree. You know, who needs sex? Like, you know, when you get to a certain age, you don't need that. It leaves you. It's not that wonderful anyway. All of that is such nonsense. We need to rewrite our own stories, and we need to rewrite a story based on claiming our sexuality. I mean, before you went on air, I had this conversation with you, which I'll share, you know. It's like in tantra, there is a thing called a wave of bliss, which is the ability of a woman to have a 20-minute orgasm. Now, I have said that to women who go, why would you want to do that? It's like, I'm too busy for that. I mean, we all know that an orgasm can get rid of a headache. So a 20-minute orgasm, who knows what it could do health-wise for you. But I actually watched a video of a woman having a 1 hour continual orgasm. And it was just constant. absolutely constant. The wave after wave after wave, but constant. There was no 5-minute break in between. But there wasn't even a minute. It was just consistent touch. And this was developed by her. They're both doctors, husband and a wife. And the husband, she could never have an orgasm when they got married. And they're, in their 50s now, but when they got married, she could not orgasm. And he said, as a doctor, I need to know why. Why can't you have an orgasm? So he spent his life dedicated. And so he did it, and he found a way. Now, most women don't know what pleasures them. I mean, we know overall, you could say, well, yes, just say you like oral sex, right? Just say, for argument's sake. How do you like that? Or you might say, well, yes, I love my clitoris touch, but how do you like that? And do you know? Because so many women don't, and they expect their men to know, and they say, he doesn't know how to make love to me properly, or it's always boring. Well, it's always boring because you don't have the courage to go there yourself, learn what you like, and then teach your beloved. It's like we've got to rewrite the history books for women and sexuality and stop blaming our men. Because my experience of men from teaching Tantra is that men will walk over hot coals for their beloveds if they know how to walk on the coals. But if you don't show them where the coals are, it just gets so upset at the level of pornography that's happening, at the level of, I don't know whether you saw it. There was a thing on some show on TV just this week in Adelaide. They were interviewing, this guy was doing a thing on porn, and he interviewed this young boy. He was 19. And he said to this young boy, so how many times a day do you masturbate? How many times a day do you watch porn? He said, 8 or 9 times a day. Now, okay, at 19, I'm sure they could have 8 or 9 orgasms in a day. But he said, what drives you to do that? And why do you do that instead of having a girlfriend? He said, girls don't know what really works for most men. He said, I was shocked. He said, watching the porn stars, they're so educated. And so young girls are saying, oh, well, he just wants to, that whole 59 Shades of Grey, I could have strangled the woman who wrote that book, because what she said to women was, it's okay to be beaten. And I understand the whole other side of it, but basically she degraded herself a lot by allowing him to do what he did. And now we've got young girls who are seeing these guys who are watching this porn. They have no idea what lovemaking is. They have no idea what Tantra is. They have no idea of what's possible. And so we're breeding an entire generation of kids. They're going to write a story that's going to take us back even further than where we've been. That's why it's important for people like you. You're the next generation down from me. At 70, it's like, yeah, whatever. If we don't break it, then we have a major problem on our hands. And so, do you know that OMG Yes site? And what it is, it was started by a woman who said, we need to educate women. And so basically she created this whole site, and they've got tons of women who actually say, this is how I like to have my clitoris touched. Now, it's not porn. It is so beautifully done. And you've got all these women giving you ideas, because if you don't know anything about sexuality and you have never touched yourself, and what you think is that it's like what a lot of men do, which is pressure, 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 stroke, 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 stroke in one way, it's like, do you know that there's a difference between the right side and the left side at the top of the clitoris? And there have been yoni or sacred spot healers coming, that they've been around for 20 odd years. They used to do lots of trainings in Australia, and I have several friends both here and in America who were trained to be healers of the yoni. Say you're on your own, or say you were in a relationship with a man isn't interested, although I can't imagine for one reason why a man wouldn't be, but nevertheless there are such men, they do exist. Then to be able to go to someone to have that healing is phenomenally powerful. Just to be able to, and this is the whole numbness that I was talking about, the anesthetization of the yoni. In order to wake it up, it needs very gentle, what's the word for lots and 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 lots of healing. What I've started doing, and I've been doing it for about a year, is when I wake up in the morning, I put my hand over my yoni and I say, good morning. Is there anything that I can do for you today? and because I truly think, Jane, that you know how we say that our intuition is in our gut? I think for women,
Yes.
our intuition is in our yoni, and that if we listen close enough and hard enough, she will answer us and she will give us all of the directions that we need as to where to go. Even though that part of us is really scared, if we really listen, it's like listening to your angels, except you're listening to your yoni. Remember, whoever's listening to this, yoni means sacred space. So it's a space that has been raped, pillaged, destroyed, abused, screwed to the wall for eons. And now is the time for it to come into its full flowering. My goal, I've always said in Tantra, Jane, coming from where I came from sexually, which was being raped, I've come an enormous long way. But if you were to compare me to a champagne bottle, I used to say that I was in the bottle of the champagne, working my way up, but I was working my way up to the neck. Over the late few years, I've always said to the people, the women at Tantra, I think I'm climbing up the neck. But I seriously believe that with the work that I'm doing now, you know, I'm about to pop the cork. A yoni egg, and I like nephrite jade ones personally, but rose quartz is beautiful as well. Obsidian is beautiful. So they literally heal from the inside out. See, the thing about all of us is that we want to do everything fast, you know, like we want it now. Healing a yoni is a long-term job. And you might think that you've begun the healing, and you have, and you might get to that plateau, a bit like losing weight. You know, you don't do anything, and then suddenly, wow, there's another layer that comes up. You go, but I thought I dealt with that. So if you're going to start it, expect it to be a practice rather than a moment. And so when you get your egg, the first thing you have to do, I mean, I'm going to give you a picture, right? So the egg arrives in the mail and you go, wow, I don't know what to do with this, but okay, I'll shove it in. That's not how it works. You have to actually begin a relationship with it. So you would do like a meditation to settle yourself into your body and light a candle or something beautiful and hold the egg and connect with it. Just looking at it, connect with it. And when you feel connected, then you can start to think about inserting it, and start with a big egg because they come in different sizes, and start with a big egg so that the muscles kind of fit around it anyway. So if you had a little one, you might be scared that it could get lost. They can't get lost, although the first time I ever used one, I thought I had, you know, it's like if you relax and breathe and just give a little push, they'll automatically come out. So what yoni eggs do is, of course, they tone the pelvic floor. So they tone all the muscles of the sacred space, which means that you can then start to determine different muscles. You know, when you go to a gym and you decide that you're going to work on your, I don't know, your trapezius muscle or your biceps or your whatever, and eventually you learn to distinguish that muscle. Well, this is the same kind of thing. So you learn to distinguish the muscles in the yoni. There are a million health benefits to using them. And I think that the egg is better than the wand, because the wand for me is more like, it's an awkward shape because it's long. That's something that you would use more for stimulation rather more than heal. I mean, I know they're healing because it's a crystal, but you know, let's make that differentiation between the two. The yoni egg heals so much stuff and so much old pain and so much old wounding, and all the times when your yoni's been battered by a hard penis / lingam that just wanted to come, basically. And so all of those little areas inside that have been beaten into complete anesthesia begin to wake up And you can walk around using a yoni egg. You can sleep in it. You can, but it's really beautiful to start the process really slow and really nurturing, and think of it like a meditation. This is an opportunity to actually heal myself. And men love being inside a woman because it's a wonderful thing to do. But also when they're in relationship, often they don't get there very often because we're too tired, or we've got kids, or we're, whatever story we want to come up with. So it's like, if a man can understand to just be inside a woman and ask questions. You have to have an agreement with that, otherwise the woman's going to hit him around the head, But if you have an agreement, like, what about if we just try this? What about if we give this a go? And slowly, because women are way more complicated than men. Men are so simple, I don't mean that in a derogative way. I mean they're uncomplicated when it comes to sexuality, the majority of them. So men, I acknowledge every one of you, if you're listening to this, please do your homework. And if you're not in a relationship, train yourself about a woman's body. Learn about it, get diagrams, figure out where the cervix is, figure out what the clitoris is actually about. And if I could say one thing, when you're touching a woman, or a man, whoever you're touching, do it consciously. We tend to go unconscious because sex is never something that we've been instructed in or taught. And so you've got to stay conscious. Otherwise, you go off, especially us, we go off thinking about, have we made lunch for tomorrow? So staying in that moment and staying conscious is how we're actually going to bring that intimacy back in. Put orgasm at the very end of the path, because the journey to there is enormous, and it's way more pleasurable, the journey, than the actual destination, because it's waking up our entire being and bringing us closer to ourselves, bringing us closer to our beloved. And, I truly believe that when you make love in a tantric way, you bring love into the world.
Infinite love and gratitude to Diane for sharing her wisdom with us. And if you'd like to reach out to her, head to her website, beyondtheordinary.net.au. You've been listening to a LifeSource Masterclass. Check out our other shows by heading to our website, lifesource.global.